everyone, welcome back to Million Dollars Media's The Alien Collection, the video series where we cover first three Alien movies leading up to Alien Romulus. We are now on video 2, so that means we are covering Aliens.
Yes.
In my opinion, my favorite of the franchise.
That's completely fair.
I love this movie.
I have very little affinity for this movie, but let me explain why that is.
Okay.
I enjoy Aliens a lot as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very, very different movie to the original, and at the time when I first watched it, I was very disappointed because I wanted there to be more things like the original film, and this just was not that. On its own merits, it is a very well-made film. I only have like one little gripe with it, but I think it does a lot of things well.
Okay. Well, let me just say what I like about this film, and then I would like to hear what that gripe is.
Yes.
Personally, I prefer this film more because I like the characters in this one more, especially just like out the gate making Ripley the main character.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one was kind of teetering on like, okay, who am I supposed to follow here? And then when it becomes Ripley, you really get invested because she was the one character that everybody was like, she just listen to Ripley, damn it.
Yeah.
In this film, they still continue. No one's listening to Ripley until it's too late. But in this one, I like getting to see her just kind of be like, she knows what this thing is, and she's going to try her best to try to save as many people as she could possibly can in this situation that she was, again, thrown into.
Right.
Like, this poor chick has just been screwed over by the Weyland-Yutani Company more than once at this point.
Yeah. The Alien movies, do they like capitalism? Debatable.
No. You're funny. But no, like, even then I like adding lore to the Weyland-Yutani Company, even to the fact that, like, the whole premise of this movie is they have access to their own military.
Yeah.
Or to the military.
Yeah.
Which,
and I mean, you know,
yeah.
Like I said, I'll have a gripe about this movie later. I do fucking love the Space Marines as a bunch of dumb gun-toting idiots. And also, their being sort of meatheads leads to some absolutely fantastic dialogue. Like when Ripley is telling them not to use guns, and they're like, what are we supposed to use? Harsh language?
That is really funny. I love that line. And that line, again, it really works to this day, too.
Yeah.
Like, I think it works better today, honestly.
Yeah, it's such a blast of a movie, and the action sequences are all very fun.
Oh, very fun. Like, the first alien encounter, it kind of goes more back into that tense moment from the first film, where they would do these kind of things. The tension that just gets built up, again, using the motion tracker, and you're like, okay, apparently there's supposed to be, like, a swarm of these things around us, but we just can't see them anywhere. And then when that first one, like, literally, like, comes out of the wall, like, it's a great illusion where it's just like, is that what oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, dude, it is so... Admittedly, I don't like the alien design in this film as much.
Yeah.
I feel like they were like, look, we can't do that clear, like, reflective head on, like, 50 different aliens. Let's just say these are the warriors, and they have, like, a ridge design down the front.
Yeah.
I'll say this. It gives a lot of really interesting non-explanative lore to the xenomorphs as a whole.
Right.
Even down to, like, adding a freaking queen in the mix.
Right. And the fight against the queen is amazing.
It's so good. I know a lot of people love to get to the, like, get away from her, you bitch moment. But for me, what I love is, like, when, you know, Ripley is, like, she's the only one left, or, like, the only one able-bodied to do anything, really. And she's basically duct-taped a gun to a flamethrower. It's got the motion tracker. She's just running about this thing.
Yep.
And, like, I love the moment where there's no dialogue required. It's her. She's got Newt. And she points the flamethrower to one of the eggs, and the queen just, like, freaks out and just, like, kind of, like, looks over to the drone or warrior, and the warrior just backs up. Like,
yeah.
You don't need any dialogue there, and you got everything you needed in that one moment. Like, both these characters, one human, one not human at all, just, they understand each other at this point, and I just love that about this movie. Of just, like, I mean, that James Cameron guy sure knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I sure hope that every movie he goes on to make is this good.
Yeah. Review for Avatar 2 here.
But But yeah, I mean, so I'll say my one minor gripe.
Okay.
I love Aliens a lot as its own movie.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that irks me about it is that I fundamentally don't like the premise of we've gone from fighting one alien, now let's fight 100,000 of them.
Is it the inverse ninja theory?
How do you mean?
So there's this theory in storytelling, filmmaking, TV, anything pretty much. Anything that involves a ninja, one ninja can take out 50 different men and get out unscathed. Now, say there's now 50 of that same kind of ninja, same training, same stuff that. They're now taken out by one guy.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I have heard this before, but I've never heard it with ninjas. I always heard it with Daleks from Doctor Who.
Oh, well, that's much nerdier.
Yes. Well, but it's because whenever there's an episode where there's one Dalek in like an area, it's going to be the most powerful soldier in the entire universe,
exactly.
Capable of gunning people down within instants. But whenever there's an episode where they have to fight a whole fleet of Daleks, they get wiped out by a single attack.
It doesn't just have to be ninjas, it could be Daleks, it could be, and in this film, it's xenomorphs, where it's suddenly like one xenomorph can just be gunned down instantly.
Yes, and that's the issue, is to me, it really loses a lot about what I liked about the xenomorph in the first movie.
That's
was
fair.
That it was this one thing that was so fundamentally terrifying because we didn't know anything about it. Mm-hmm. And then they die by the hundreds in this movie, and it really feels like a lot of the impact and weight of a xenomorph showing up is just undercut.
The only thing I can kind of go in defense of this movie for is that the initial attack really does show like how terrifying it is now that there's just like you're just surrounded by these things. You can't go anywhere, and like you don't know where they're going to be in the walls and stuff like that. And like a good majority of our characters are just dead before the second act even happens.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not like the xenomorphs aren't threatening. They're just threatening in a different way that, to me, loses some of the magic.
That's fair.
But, again, that's not to say that this movie has no merit or isn't good. It's just, I feel like it's going for something that is so vastly different that it collides a little bit with the space that the first movie is occupying. Mm-hmm. And I think that the best way to enjoy both of them is to look at them as connected but very separate.
Exactly, yeah. What makes the first film so unique is that, like, you can put yourself in that situation.
Yes.
And, like, the characters they're defined, but they're not so defined that you can't, like, take yourself out of that situation. Whereas this film, there are actual characters. This is Ripley, this is Hicks, this is Newt, this is Bishop, this is Bill Paxton. Sorry, I forgot his name. You got Vasquez. You got so many characters. I mean, Vasquez is like, that's a little bit of a problematic character nowadays, but, you know.
Right.
But even then, like, back then, it was just like, oh, cool. Like, just this chick who was just a muscular woman who was just able to, like, carry around this big-ass gun that was usually traditional for, like, a male character.
Yeah.
And
that was cool as hell.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I love is, like, by the end, it's like, well, no, you don't have to be that to be cool. You can be like Ripley, who's just, for all intents and purposes, the same build as, like, your neighbor or your mom, for that matter.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't mention it in the last review, but I'll mention it here. Fucking Sigourney Weaver is awesome.
I'll say this. This is the film where I was like, she's awesome. I like her in the first, but this is the film where I was like, no, she fucking kicks ass.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver rules. And it's so nice to see her in this movie.
Well, yeah, and treated with respect.
Yeah, exactly. I.e. not in Alien 3.
Here's the thing, and I know every fucking Alpha Sigma YouTube channel or whatever loves to go to this film and be like, why don't they do it like this anymore? And I admittedly, when I was watching this, I was like, wow, they don't do it like this anymore. But then again, I'm like, I can't put my finger on it as to why this film doesn't come across as like, I don't want to say pander, but I didn't even think of that during this film. I was like, no, that's Ripley, and she's badass.
Right. It's very interesting to look at from the sort of perspective of how we're representing women in films, mm-hmm. because in a lot of ways Ripley's gender both is and isn't centered. And I mean, that's partially because, right, like with the first movie and some portions of this movie talking about the xenomorphs as sort of a sort of overarching metaphor involving sexual violence. Mm-hmm. Right, like it is inexorable to talk about Ripley as a woman from that perspective.
True.
However, there is nothing that the movie goes out of its way to do to frame Ripley as explicitly feminine.
That's fair.
Like And it's kind of interesting in that sense where her identity as a woman is not necessarily centralized by the narrative, but it's centralized by the subtext.
You know
And
what?
I
I
think
think you
that's
nailed it for me there. I think that's yeah. I think you just hit it on the head. I could
I
never
think
explained it like that, but you explaining it makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm pretty sure that's why I like this film. It's just like it's never outright said like you're a girl, you can't do that. Like they don't go
right,
out of their way to do that. They're like the more the stuff that they're doing is just more like you're lower ranking. Like okay, you were part of the original mission. Let's just have you here to fix this mission up.
right.
And seeing her overcome everything like that, like by the end of it, she like Hicks, who is now the military man in charge, he basically says like, "She's right. Listen to her,"
Yeah,
which I love. I love their relationship. Like he immediately sees her as like, no, she knows what she's doing. She knows more than what any of you are giving the respect for. Like if I'm gonna live, it's because I'm listening to her.
right.
And guess what? Well, he lives
Yeah.
to this movie.
But yeah, no. Aliens is a very good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it works better as a sort of sister film to the first one than it does as specifically a sequel.
I agree.
In
Yeah.
the sense that it doesn't feel like it's continuing on with what Alien was originally doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just doing its own thing with some of the same characters in the same setting.
Which, to be fair, is usually what my favorite kind of sequels are.
That is fair. I think for me, that's one of the kinds of sequels that can work. It's because my ideal sequels are if we're telling a whole story across multiple parts. I'm fine.
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm fine with The Lord of the Rings having been 3 books. Like I think that those work fine as sequels to each other. But a movie should either be this or it should be that.
That's
I don't
fair.
like the sort of middle ground of like we're going to do a new story, but it's part of an overarching story. But events of this movie are largely unconnected except for like 2 things, like the Fantastic Beasts films. Loved doing that.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's not going to be actual plot progression because each of these movies is going to have its own structure where nothing moves forward except for the individual pieces, and then we'll put like a lore drop at the end.
Yeah.
And
Also-
I hated that.
Also, kind of sounds like the Paranormal Activity movies.
Yeah.
Where it'd just be like, here, let's just wait for like a good 2 hours until we get one interesting thing at the end that progresses the story forward. The reason why I like these kind of sequels is because like it allows like the possibility of like people doing different things with the concept than
And I
just
think that's great. And I think that David Fincher should have not, but I think that that's
yeah. Well, okay,
Sorry,
I'll
I'm
say
bagging on Alien 3. We're about to review.
we're gonna review, and I'll be in defense a little bit of that film, not for everything, but on some of the behind the scenes creative elements of that film. But for this film, I just love so much about it. It's just one of those films I can pop on and just enjoy.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's gruesome enough without being just overly explicit and mean spirited. The relationship between Ripley and Newt is so wholesome that like that whole thing just makes me care about this film even more. You're like, oh man, now admittedly I know that the whole idea is that like, okay, these aliens take these people and bring them back to their nest. However, that kid should be dead.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. That's my one thing about the film. I'm like, why is this what?
Was it not because she can communicate with the xenomorphs? That was always what I thought.
I never got that. That might have been in the director's cut, but I never got that impression. I always got the impression she only like managed to survive is just because she was just like, I don't know, either she just got lucky and they were just like not really looking for her that hard, and she just managed to hide in this one specific area.
Fair.
Like I think even Ripley points out that like, look, if this little girl can survive for like 16 days here,
Yeah.
then we can figure out a way to get out of this situation.
Right.
Like, no, like, I just love this film. I also love the technology and the weaponry. Like, I don't know what it is about James Cameron, but he just knows how to, like, flesh out worlds and, like, explain technology without it going into, like, a whole, like, gun show.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I always appreciate when sci-fi does that. Like, I'll point recently to something that I think does that very well, which is Dune.
Yes. Yeah.
Just not beleaguer itself with explaining every single piece of technology the characters use.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still clear enough how they work. Like, I really like the explanation they give for the like kinesis shields.
Well, in this
Very.
film specifically, like the pulse rifle, they literally have a whole scene of him breaking it down, but it doesn't come across as like, "Hey, audience, this is this." It's more just like shown as a way that these two characters bonding over each other and like him trying to figure out a way to basically make sure that Ripley's safe, and it's also showing that he trusts Ripley and he thinks that she's strong enough to be able to wield one of these things correctly. Like, there's a lot more going on in that scene other than just audience. This is how you fire a gun.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, Alien does everything great. I really like the switch in theme color to include a lot more blue. I like how blue the movie is. I think that every movie that James Cameron makes from here on out needs to incorporate the color blue in some way.
Okay, now you're just being an ass.
I don't know how he could do that. Maybe he could make some movie that features people that are blue.
Huh. I got just the review for you.
Go check out our review of Avatar: The Way of Water if you want to hear us be less nice to James Cameron. I'm not on that episode, but I assume nice things were not said about James Cameron.
Okay.
Anyways,
yeah. But yeah, I think we can wrap up Aliens unless you got something else to say.
Like this movie, I like it less than the original. For me, I like the original Alien more as a sort of total, like, full body immersive experience. Like, I really like how much that movie draws you in. And for Aliens, it's such a fantastic popcorn type of movie where I could just sit down and watch it endlessly, and it's always fun.
Mm-hmm. Which
it's just
kind of like more. That's more my thing.
That's completely fair. I think it just comes down to your preference between these first two movies will ultimately come down to what you are seeking out in a movie-going experience.
Yeah.
But that does not serve as a black mark against one or the other, right? Like, they're both absolutely fantastic in their own ways.
Mm-hmm. And it was also the film that tricked people to thinking, hey, this franchise can actually be good.
Yeah. Let's dispel that illusion.
Yep. We're going to be covering Alien 3 or Alien Cubed. So yeah, we're going to have some things to say about that one. I'm Max.
I'm Emily. Go subscribe to us on Patreon.
Yes, $5 a month. You can listen to all of our videos unedited, including this one, where you basically get to listen to all 3 of the Alien movies covered in one video.
That's true. You could hear me say something that I asked Max to cut out. I probably said something I asked Max to cut out. So if you want to hear me doing an extended bit about James Cameron, subscribe to our Patreon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. That's all I got to say. Bye.